Thank you so much for joining us. If you can, let's start off by talking to you about what motivated you to get into the oil and gas energy industry and what keeps you here.
So, I started from France, where I was studying, and Schlumberger there is a very known company in the technology space. So I really was attracted to the content, the technology content, but also to the fact that they were offering jobs that were around the world. So that was really the way I got in. I really didn't know much about oil and gas. But then once I got there and did some work with Schlumberger, what I discovered is all about really the world, the diversity of the people and the places you go to that you would never do that if you work somewhere else. And I haven't looked back.
Sounds like a great story, great beginning there. Can you describe your day-to-day for us right now, currently with your role?
So right now, I look after a portfolio of product lines, or if you like, businesses, global businesses in Schlumberger. And that goes from what we call reservoir businesses that focus on some of the seismic measurements and software, all the way to infrastructure businesses that are all around equipments, from subsea equipments to engineering of rigs or other equipments for the oil field. So it's a very diverse portfolio, and what I do really is support the businesses to grow their business, to make the right strategic choices, to hire get the resources they need, to hire the people they need, the capabilities they need to develop also. So my job really is to shepherd, if you like, this portfolio for growth and for earnings, and to add value to the company. So a lot of dealing with people around the world, and of course here in Houston, and a lot of involvement in business decisions and strategic decisions.
And if you can, looking back, can you describe a significant career milestone for us?
So, one significant career milestone happened very early on in my career, where I was trusted to manage one of the key technology portfolios in Schlumberger. It was a business we had at the time, we still have today, called Wireline, and I was about 8 years in the company, and I was given the new technology portfolio, which was really great because, one, I like the technology, so I like to be in charge of that. But the other thing is I was relatively junior at that time, and to be trusted with such a responsibility, I certainly felt the weight of the responsibility, but also had the opportunity to work with the technology organization to, define what we need to develop, and then to introduce it to customers, and then to understand customer problems. So that was really a great opportunity. Lots of trust, and it's such a boost. So.
Good testament, of course, to your work ethic there. Can you talk to us about a challenge or a risk that you may have faced with being a woman in the industry? How has that been like for you?
So that's an interesting question, because I think I didn't feel there is a risk, but let me maybe focus on the challenges. I think the challenge was early on in my career. When I joined, it was around 96. There were women in the industry. It's not that there weren't, but in the field, there weren't many women working in the field. The field lifestyle is not particularly attractive, in fact, to men or women. It's tough, it's remote, and in many parts of the world, or even nationally, is always in remote places. So the challenge was to really gain trust of other people in that space. There weren't many women. I used to work offshore Nigeria at that time, and not many, female engineers around there. So the challenge was to really overcome the first surprise when you show up somewhere offshore and they don't recognize that your name is actually you're a woman, and then you show up at midnight, you get off the boat, and they don't know what to do with you because they haven't planned for you to have a room or something. But I think it was challenging that way, that novelty was challenging, and then some people want to help you and you want to really do your job. But once you get over that, I think because it's a high-risk environment, and because it relies on teamwork, what you do is part of a bigger puzzle of doing whatever we do out there. Once you do that for a while and people see you're contributing and you are, doing your job, then they respect you. There's some people who certainly never wanted to see females in the field. I try not to focus on those people and rather focus on the ones who are supportive and certainly very constructive.
And Hinda, with knowing that now, do you have advice for younger professionals maybe trying to find their place in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing is don't let Although it's different times, right? I think at the time there were very few women. There are so many more women now working in the field and working in the industry. Many of my customers are, many of my competitors are. So it's a really different times. But for young women joining our industry, I think it's an industry that has a lot of technology, and that's a really very nice normalizing field for everybody. It's an industry that is really wanting talent, and women have plenty of talent. And there will always be people who are resistant to change. So don't focus on those ones. Focus on the ones who are really rather accepting the change and even more encouraging the change. Focus on those people who are constructive, and don't let anyone, pull you down. That's my advice.
A good advice there. What about mentors? So how important do you think mentors are?
I think anytime you have an opportunity to have someone give you a sound advice, you should welcome it as a person, no matter what you do, at what level, at any time. So from that perspective, you think of mentoring as a sounding board, as someone can, open doors for you, make you think differently, then you should pursue it. Now, for women specifically in the oil and gas, I think it's very important to not face problems or challenges or questions on your own, because there is always a better perspective or a different perspective. So for women, because still the lifestyle of the industry is somewhat challenging, it requires in some cases mobility, it has a lifestyle that is 24/7. It's a very intense industry, no denying that. You could be faced with all sorts of things, from work-life balance, from choices on your family, choices from dual career challenges, and the mentorship or any mentors that you might have as a person is someone you can ask of some of the questions that you might grapple with. So for me, I think it's very, very important that people seek mentors, and when they have someone who is volunteering to do that for them, to grab it.
You mentioned work-life balance. Do you have any advice there? Any tips for that?
So I tend to believe that there isn't really a recipe for work-life balance. There isn't a checklist you have to kind of check, say, okay, done, it's working, it's great. I think work-life balance is in many ways different from one person to the other. And my big advice to anybody, whether men or women for that matter, is don't seek perfection. It just doesn't exist. What sounds perfect for one person, or balanced, I would say, is completely, unacceptable or too much for another person. So really pursue what makes you as a person balanced in your own way, meaning what is the balance for your family and children, if you have, for your spouse or partner, for your larger family. Sometimes from a culture perspective, the larger family has a say as well in that balance, and what makes you content with what you do. So but seeking perfection where you have perfect everything is just very, very hard to achieve. I don't know how you achieve that. So that's really the advice. I get this question often, obviously, and I don't think there is a recipe for success. It really differs from one person to the other, and it requires that you understand what makes you happy and content, and makes your family also content. That's very important.
Very important sound advice there. And Hinda, how do you feel being involved in this dynamic group of women? You're very deserving of this recognition for the 25 influential women in energy. And also, how important do you think a program such as this for the industry?
So, I don't tend to seek visibility, so it's a little sometimes uncomfortable. I had all my colleagues celebrating it and all that, which was very nice, but very awkward sometimes. But having thought about it, I thought, if it's a platform to help show that, there are so many possibilities in the industry, and to attract more women, more importantly, I think to make women stay in our industry, because we do attract a lot of female engineers and geoscientists and other professional females to the industry, but they tend to go somewhere else after a while, then it's worth it. And I think it's these kind of programs bring the attention to achievements, give examples to other young talent who is looking and saying, oh, that's interesting career path, maybe I could do that. Or have ideas on what works, what doesn't work, on the challenges that you can see. And you're asking the question about work-life balance. Just seeing this diversity of women, that it's very impressive. And some of the ladies, you're sitting there thinking, oh, I can't believe I'm on the same list. This is really a big honor. So even for people who've been 20 years plus in the industry, it's great to see what others have achieved. So from that perspective, I think it's worth continuing with programs like that, because we still lack women in this industry, and there is absolutely no reason for it. I really don't think that there are challenges, no question, but I don't think there is a reason for us not to have more gender diversity in the industry.
Well, we really appreciate your time and you sharing your story with us, Hinda. Thank you very much, and congratulations on this honor.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And for Heart Energy, I'm Jessica Morales.